my darlings, I'm Sophie Darling and welcome back to the channel. Today we're reacting to episode 7 of series 2 of the Apothecary Diaries. We finished last episode with the Emperor talking to Li Hua about Mao Mao and Mao Mao being quite involved, and then we cut to this building. We're not quite sure what this building is. Maybe it's one of the abandoned buildings in the palace. I'm not entirely sure what its reference is, but we will know when we delve into this episode, because we know by now that whatever we see within the last couple of seconds of the episode tends to lead on to what the next episode is going to be about. It's kind of like a little clue drop as to what the next episode could surround itself around, but it's also so vague that you can just guess it from the offset. Sometimes you can, sometimes it's a lot harder. Like that was just a building. I'm not quite sure how you were supposed to guess it unless like you're big into like Chinese cultural studies and understand the design of Chinese buildings in that historical time period. I don't, so I probably am missing the hint. Whereas if you are someone that has grown up in China or lived in China or is aware of Chinese imperial history or even just interested in Chinese architecture, you might click on to what the significance is. Whereas I'm like, it's a building. I don't know what this could mean. But we also saw badass Li Hua punish Shin and was far more merciful than I ever would be. Of course, we know that Shin is going to have to leave in disgrace, and Shin is going to be most likely not taken in by her family because she's been let go from her position and her reputation is going to be in tatters. But I still think it's a mercy in terms of the fact that Li Hua is still very aware that reputation matters. And if her cousin was executed for trying to kill the emperor's children, that would tarnish her own family in turn. That would tarnish her reputation. And not because she has anything to do with it, because she's the victim, but mud sticks, unfortunately. And I think she's conscious of that. I think she's aware that if word got out that if Shin was targeting the emperor's children and was executed for that reason, her family would be tarnished in association. They would have people talking negatively about them, and it could also impact her own position in court. So I think her act of mercy is a mercy to Shin because of their childhood together, because they are cousins, because they are family, but also a wider mercy to her family itself, because she knows that they shouldn't be punished for what Shin has done, that they're not responsible for Shin's behavior, for Shin's actions. You could argue that technically the parents bear some weight in that they have groomed their daughter into believing that she's going to be an empress and that it's important for her to love the emperor, and that's all she's ever known from being young, because that has set sort of unrealistic expectations that have not been tempered when Li Hua got the position over her. You could argue that they do bear some responsibility, but at the same time, Shin is a grown woman. She should learn to manage her emotions and her expectations and learn to accept the choice that the emperor has made. And if she truly loved the emperor as much as she claimed to, which is why Mao Mao called her out, that she loved the status more than she loved the emperor, she would have accepted his decision and been quite content with her new position in court. And if she really wanted, she could have gone and been a mid-rank concubine and waited for the emperor to cast his eye on her, but she didn't do that. Her jealousy got the better of her. But I think Li Hua was merciful to her, but more so for the sake of her family and their reputation and ensuring that nobody slanders them in turn because of their association with Shin. But as well, it is a punishment to Shin. It is still a mercy because she doesn't die, but it is a punishment because she is now removed and banned from ever returning to the one place that she wants to be more than anything. She can't be near the emperor ever again because of this. So it's a mercy and it's a punishment, but she still has far more grace than I do, because I would have been like, execute her, get rid of her, especially because she was targeting my unborn child, and she's also indirectly the reason for my firstborn dying. Though I'm not sure if Li Hua knows about that, because it's never been directly stated that she knows. Maybe in the light novels she is aware that it's Shin, but she's never kind of brought it up. But I imagine after this scenario, you wouldn't help but think, how involved was she in my son dying? She probably suspects now, after the fact, that Shin probably was somehow involved in it, even if it was unintentional, but she has no conclusive proof because it was never admitted to and they never really had that conversation. The only conversation they've had is around the unborn baby. And yeah, that line about hoping she rots there in a childless bed is just so horrendous after everything she's gone through. It was just absolutely sick. But without further ado, we're going to get into episode 7 because I love this series. I love everything about it and I just want to watch more. It's really hard to stop myself binge watching, but if I binge watch, I won't comment as much as I am doing. So I have to be really cautious that I'm not just watching and not saying anything. So this is why we don't binge watch. So we can take it like one episode at a time, but it's so hard when the show is so good. Baby Jinshi! Oh? Oh, she looks angry. Previous Empress Dowager.
あんな表情をしていたのだろう。
さあ、部屋にお戻り。
Oh, okay, there's so much going on in this one scene. Okay, so that's the previous emperor. We can see that he is quite fearful of his mother, which means he doesn't want to speak out against her. She's telling him to go back to his room. She's the one directing him, even though he should be the one in charge. He is the emperor. She's just the Empress Dowager. But he was reaching out for Jinshi, and we know he has a liking for little girls. And I know Jinshi is not a little girl. Jinshi is a boy. But Jinshi is constantly talked about having feminine features, being very delicate, being very attractive. So I'm wondering if him attempting to reach out is because even though Jinshi is his child, there is a weird attraction to him because he has an attraction to young girls and has that predilection to be a pedophile, essentially. So I'm wondering if that's why he's like reaching out to Jinshi. So like there's two theories that I could run with here in analyzing this very brief scene, which is he's reaching out to Jinshi to try and get to know this son, this younger son that he's been kept away from, because we can see from the look on Jinshi's mother's face, because that's not really his mum, it's his grandma. She doesn't want him anywhere near Jinshi, doesn't want him touching Jinshi, which means she's very protective of him. So she's either protective of him because she worries that he's going to try and harm Jinshi in some way, or she's protective of Jinshi because she doesn't want Jinshi anywhere near this man to learn from his bad habits. She wants to protect him so that he doesn't end up anything like this man that is supposed to be his father but isn't his father. But you know what I mean. I understand how the family timeline works, but because we don't know names, it's really hard to like verbally explain it to you all. So she's either keeping Jinshi away from him because she's scared that he's attracted to Jinshi, who is very feminine looking, and that he could then try and do something to Jinshi, regardless of it being his son or not, because Jinshi looks very feminine in appearance and he's also very young. He's a child. He's quite easy to manipulate. So that's one theory, but the other theory could be that she just doesn't want him anywhere near Jinshi because she doesn't want him to have any impact on his life, doesn't want Jinshi to know him, doesn't want Jinshi to learn anything from him, wants Jinshi to be a completely different type of man and to learn absolutely nothing from the man that is supposedly his father. That's what I'm thinking. But she, the Empress Dowager, has so many attendants around her, so many people swarming. I imagine she has like people in different places running different things. She seems to have like her hands everywhere and he's terrified of her. So I wonder if their relationship is abusive, if he's terrified of his mother because she's abused him, and in turn, he's gone on to abuse others less powerful. This isn't a justification for the previous emperor being a pedophile. I'm going to stress that now. There is no justification for it. It's disgusting. But you do tend to find that those that go on to abuse children were often abused themselves. And this, again, is no justification, no excuse. There are plenty of people that were abused that never go on to be abusers. Must stress that before anyone gets it twisted or thinks that I am saying something that is completely out of pocket. But there is research that has been done in psychology that people that go on to abuse children most likely have been victims of child abuse themselves to some extent. And then they then exact that onto others who are less powerful than themselves to make themselves feel more validated and to feel that they have more control. Again, not a justification, but it makes me wonder in this scenario, because of how scared he is of her, that if she has abused him and he in turn is now abusing young girls as a way to regain authority, regain control, or to maybe position himself as having power when he doesn't have any. I'm not entirely sure, but for such a brief scene, that's so interesting. The weird family dynamic, his mother not wanting him anywhere near him, intervening, that look on her face. She is angry, furious. If looks could kill, the emperor would be dead. And then you have the Empress Dowager coming in as well to usher her son back to his rooms. Another theory is that he could be going senile because he seems quite old, disheveled, almost as if he's not quite old there, which means he's either reaching out to Jinshi because he is going senile and he's just trying to be friendly and doesn't quite know who he is, or he could be reaching out to Jinshi because Jinshi looks like a young girl and he doesn't recognize that Jinshi is his son in that moment, and he just thinks this is a young girl that he's come across unattended and easy to manipulate how he wants to manipulate them. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll delve into it. Sorry, I had to pause this scene because there was so much going on in such a brief period. It's crazy.
あの老人はあの老婆は誰だったのだろう
Oh, they have him by the arms as well, so he's quite literally being
うまく思い
manhandled.
出せない
Jinshi doesn't even know who they are. So he was very much kept well away from the Empress Dowager and the Emperor by his mother. Interesting. What a man.
あの老人と老婆が何者なのかあの
He
頃は
does
知る
now.
由もなかったがずっと父だと思っていた男は兄だということも
Wait. So he thought the Emperor was his father and then was taught later on that it was actually his brother. What a weird fucking family dynamic this is. So he always thought the Emperor was his dad. There is a big age gap between them. It's just funny because that is his dad. So he was bang on the money. He was right. That was his dad. But then he was taught later on, maybe when they realized that they needed to hide his true identity even further, that actually isn't his dad, it's his brother. How fucked up if he finds out at some point that he was actually right all along, that he's just been coerced into thinking that that's not his dad when it is his dad. What a weird family.
そろそろ気づくはずだもしくはすでに
Oh, she knows. She's just refusing to accept it.
いつまでも黙っておく
Oh, Jinshi, my poor baby. She knows. She's just not wanting to get involved.
その腹に天の子を宿した。それがリーの最初の皇帝となられた。旋回から降りてきた女仙とも言われた。
どうだ薬屋
天使様、顔が見えてしまいます。
You'll distract
せっ
everyone.
かく
Back
文学に
away.
勤しんでいるのに、こんな生き物が覗いていたら勉強にならない。
This creature.
最初は10名ほどだったので増えた方かと。
Maybe some people were too
まあ、こんなもんだろう。
scared initially to
とはいえ、
join. So it takes more
天使
people
様
to do
の
it.
目論みが成功して、下女の識字率が上がれば、高級のありようも変わってくるだろう。
She looks bored. But yeah, it could be that they're too scared to do it, and then when they see more people join, they feel more comfortable.
まだだよ。また先生に聞きに行かないと。
I love
ママも
her.
一緒に行こう。
お古い廟。
Oh, okay. So the old shrine was in the previous ending of last episode. It's a really convoluted way of saying that.
王に細長く奥まで伸びているような。柱の間隔が狭い。かなり細かく部屋が分かれているんだろ
あれはこの地にもともと住んでいた民が作った廟だよ。
王母様ってさっき習った初代皇帝のお母さん？
王母様は息子にこう伝えたんだ。
She's been paying
こ
attention.
の地を治める者はあの廟を通り抜けないといけない。そして正しい道を選んだ者だけがこの地の長となる。しかしもう何十年も使われていない上、先帝の兄君たちはみんな流行り病で倒れただろう。残ったのは先帝のみ。
通過儀礼を行うまでもなく決まったというわけ。
Because there was only one.
昔は興味を持つ方がいたんですか？
ああ、昔ここにいた医官が変わり者でね。暇があ
Grandma's
ったら
dad?
高級内をうろうろしてたよ。
Lumen?
それってルーメン。
知ってるのかい？
しまった。
That's my dad.
養父です。高級を出た後は花町で薬屋を営んでおりまして、この人は親父と
He
仲が良
seems
かっ
like
たん
he
だろう
did. Seems to be really fond of him.
か。
Yay! He's
失
back
礼いたします。
with Gyokyu
Mate,
and
sushi.
Lingli.
この後行くところへついてきてほしいのだ。
Oh?
どちらへ？
洗濯の廟へ。
Wait, what? Why?
一体何をなさるのやら。
He wants Junshi to be the heir, doesn't he?
もう一度、チンが通ってもいいのかな？
何度来られても同じかもしれませんが、それでもよろしければ。月はどなたが？
うん。では、この二人で。
ここは女人禁制では。
Not today, it isn't.
方々も女帝も女性です。
Junshi is like, oh fuck. She's gonna finally know, isn't she?
赤き扉、通るべからず。扉の色は青、赤、緑。
I'd end up passing through the red door. Just to be
青にしよ
stubborn.
う。前は緑を選んだからな。
さようでした。
I love that we're seeing more of the Emperor this episode. He seems like such a quirky, interesting character.
理する我々の身にもなってください。使われなくなったと思ったら突然やってくるお方がいるのですから。
苦労をかける。
He seems really good-humored.
次は茶の扉を通るべからず。
緑にしよう。
これをずっと繰り返すのか？
Basically a labyrinth. She's like, I'm tired, I want to
上
go
がったり
home.
下がったり、戻ったり曲がったり。
It's the goal to get out the other ends because then you found the right path. You're the rightfully chosen to make your way through this labyrinth.
早く終わらないもんか。
Jinshi's taking this really seriously, and I think Mao Mao knows that. She's like,
青き扉を通るべからず。それと、他にもここに通じる扉が、別の道からここに合流するのか。
木を選ぶ。
よろしいですね。
行き止まり。王の子よ。だが王母の子ではない。意味はわからないが明らかに拒絶だろう。
Sir, not worthy enough. I imagine if you've multiple children that you need to determine, you send them in like 2 at a time, right? And the labyrinth decides who's worthy.
おそらくこの老宦官は高級ができる前からずっとこの廟を管理してきたのだろう。管理を続けるため虚勢して宦官になってまでここに。
お帰りはあちらです。
Imagine telling the current emperor you're not worthy. The irony.
あって進んだ。間違いはしなかったはずだ。なのに正解にはたどり着けなかった。
Jinshi's taking it seriously because Jinshi may have to do this one day.
とローメンならわかるだろうね。
親父ならわかる。養父ならわかるというのですか？
I think it's a trick question. I think it wants you to go through the doors that it's telling you not to because the emperor shouldn't be commanded by anyone. They should be the one making the commands. They should trust in their own judgment and intuition. The
三つ
pressure's
の
on.
扉。
She's
三
like,
つの
if
色
my dad can do it,
王
I
の子
can.
だが王母の子ではない。そういえば建国の物語に登場するのは初代皇帝の母王母だ。父親は出てこない。その中で王母の血筋を残そうとするなら先帝のご兄弟は同服だったのでしょうか。
Oh,
全員が同服ではないが、王子を産んだ母君たちは姉妹だと聞いた。
つまり血が近かったということですね。目の悪い方が多かったのではありませんか。
確かにあまり良くなかったと聞いたことがある。だが先帝の
I
目
don't
は
know
良
where
かった
she's
ぞ。
going with this.
やっぱり
さっきは連れて行ったけど、そう何度も入れるのはね、扉の選択に口を挟むとなればなおさら、まして妃でも姫でもないだろう。
Descendingly.
ならば妃に召し上げようか。羅漢の説得には骨が折れそうだが。
ご冗談を
Jinchi's
他の
face.
妃たちがどう思うことか。
It's a
それも
joke.
そうだ。ならばお前が連れて行くか。
あ、
それなら構わぬか。
首相がそうおっしゃるのであれば。
いつもより茶目っ気がある。
He is, but I think he also knows how much Jinchi likes Mao Mao. Especially because he spoke out against him taking her as a concubine. He was like, no, don't.
次は緑、茶、水色の中から茶を取
By
るで
poor
ございます。
eyesight, does she mean like,
水
were
色
they
の扉を
colorblind? Like they could only see certain colors?
陳の選んだ扉と違うな。
Which could have been like a hereditary trait that was passed down?
王母の子にしか選べない扉があるとしたら
Because they're colorblind,
扉
maybe.
の色に鍵があるはずだ。
Because they would only see certain colors.
赤い扉を選べ。
赤い扉などないぞ。どういうことだ。
緑の扉を。
It would look red to someone
Midori.
who's colorblind.
ここは
Oh, wow.
おめでとうございます。正しき道を選ばれたようで。その
Mamo
昔
is worthy.
王母に選ばれた者は次の王になりました。その者はここに立ち、民に宣誓することが決まりでした。
Jinchi.
できなかった時は、正しき道を選ぶ妃を連れて、再度この廟へやってきたと。本来、正しき血を受け継ぐ者がそれをな
So
すわけですが。
essentially, they have done what other people would do to be the rightful king, take a concubine in. She's not his concubine, but still, the metaphor is there.
王母は暗闇も見通せる目を持っているということでした。この廟に選ばれし者、つまり王母の血を引く者は色の識別ができない目を持つということです。
Colorblind.
赤い扉を通るなとありました。王母の子は青を選ぶ。なぜなら赤と緑の区別がつかないから確実に赤ではない扉を選ぶ。では珍しいのですが、裁縫には赤と緑の判別ができない男性が10人に1人の割合でいたそうです。最後の扉も赤を通れとありなが
But
ら
green would
赤い
appear
扉があ
red.
りませんでした。残る扉が赤だと判断します。つまり正解は2つあるように見えながら本当の正解は1つしかなかったのです。
So it doesn't mean that they can't see red and green. It just means they cannot tell the difference between the colors because they look the same to them. Okay, so it does depend on the type of color blindness that green looks more red, depending, but they also can't distinguish the difference between the two colors anyway. So it could be that the green door looks red to the individual, or it could just be that by process of elimination, they then decided that that door was the red door.
代々の皇帝にそんな特徴があれば気づきそうなものだが。
慣れてしまえばどうにか対処できるので、案外周りにいても気づかないのだとか。そして色の識別が困難な分、読めが利くとも聞きます。それが王母の目の言い伝えの元ではないでしょうか。
Oh, interesting. I can't see well at all in general. My eyesight's shit.
新たな地に定住するのは容易なことではありません。そこで彼女はこの地の長と婚姻を結んだのです。血が濃くなりすぎないようよそから来たものをめとるのは珍しいことではない。王母を祖としながら代々男子が皇位継承しているのはこの地の長を立てたやり方に従ったからだと思います。
I was gonna say there has to be a father.
そのまま自分たちの血が薄れ 途絶えるのを良しとしなかった。王母の血を確実に後世に残す方法。それが、この選択の病なのです。
Only those with the ability were able to pass it down.
王母に近しい血筋の者を妃として迎え、共に廟に入る。妃も廟に立ち入ることができるのはそのためだ。そうやって少しずつ、国の中心に入り込んでいく。元いた長の存在を物語から追い出し、王母を祖にするほどに、それはとても平和で気の長い乗っ取りだったわけだ。ま、さすがにそれは言えないけどね。
つまり陳には王母の血は流れておらぬということか。
親にその傾向があっても、子に伝わらないこともあります。それに、血は濃くなりすぎても弊害が起こります。
Genetic issues, genetic problems.
本当に謎解きするとは思いませんでした。
She's Lumen's daughter, of course she would.
この際血を薄めるのであれば、いっそこのようなものを取り込んでみては。
Stop encouraging him.
それも面白いかもしれぬが、ラカンを敵に回したくはないし、何より胸周りが15センチほど足らぬ。
余計なお世話だ。
She's not busty enough for him.
その血が入ることを快く思わない連中も多いでしょ
う。分かっておるよ。
主情は分かっておられますでしょう。お気をつけください。
分かっている。
The warning wasn't just for the Emperor, but for Jinshi as well.
一体何者なんだろう。
Mamo, you know. You do
帝
know.
のお気に入りの宦官。それだけで済ませるには何か。
There's way more than just that.
誰だっていいか。
This is what I mean. She's just like, I don't want to know because it puts me at risk. So like, she more than is aware of his importance, that he is closer to the Emperor than he lets on, especially because he's able to openly speak out against him taking Mao Mao as a concubine. But he's doing it to tease him, and also Lacan would die of palpitations. I love how even he's scared of the man. He's like, I don't want to piss him off. I don't want to run that risk, but she's doing it to protect herself. It's self-preservation. She's playing the fool because it's easier to be naive and unaware than it is to know the truth and be at risk for knowing the truth. And poor Jinshi is killing himself thinking, she doesn't know who I am and I need her to know who I am. But she is more than aware. She just will never let on to him that she knows, because why would she? She is more than aware of her station. She knows that there is an imbalance of power between them. But that metaphor of the person undergoing the rite of choosing would bring a concubine with them and would come out onto here as the rightfully chosen. Very indicative of what could happen with Jinshi and Mao Mao, because she has essentially led Jinshi through. She has taken the place of the de facto concubine. She's not his concubine, but she has taken that role. She has guided him through the rite of choosing. He is the rightfully chosen, essentially, according to the shrine. But what an interesting episode. I love that we get to see more of the Emperor. He is such a jovial man. Who knew he was so jovial and lighthearted? And it was just good to see a bit more of his personality come out, because he's such like a mysterious figure that it's often rare to kind of see this side of him. And I love that he even makes a jab at Mao Mao's chest size. He's like, take her as a concubine. She need a bit more boobage. But I think part of it is also teasing Jinshi. He can see how much Jinshi cares for her and how much he wants to be with her. That, yeah, it makes sense. So essentially, the fact that this trait no longer is dominant in the royal family is most likely their subtle way of saying that there's less incest happening. It's the bloodlines becoming diluted, because the thicker the bloodline means the closer you are related and causes genetic problems. Just look at the Habsburgs. Yeah, the Habsburg jewel was a famous genetic trait amongst their children and subsequent generations because of familial inbreeding between cousins and uncles and nieces and so on and so forth. So the fact that this genetic trait has begun to wean is primarily because there's so many concubines that could give birth to children. So you're diluting the bloodline. You are not having relations with people so close to home. So therefore, that trait isn't going to get passed on because it's not always genetically passed on. I think both parents have to carry it. So the fact that there's concubines that do have that ability could also indicate that there are relatives of the royal family that do become concubines, like cousins or even nieces. I think that's where it was kind of hinting at, is that like there's a familial link there. But obviously, the previous emperor, all his half brothers died, so he was the only one that could inherit. So he didn't have to go through the rite of choosing to determine whether he had this genetic colorblindness. And then the current emperor, we don't know their genetic lineage. We don't know how his mother is connected to the previous emperor. It could be that they have no familial connection. And then Jinshi is from Aldua and the current emperor, so he obviously hasn't inherited it either. So it was a way to determine that you were legitimate and able to inherit, but I think they also were aware that not everyone was going to get it because the bloodlines became more diluted as time went on. Hence why they brought in the rule of the concubines being able to do it, because there will be some concubines that do inherit that trait, which is rare because it's rare for women to actually have it. It's more common for men, more rare for women, but it's their way of still holding power, of the Mother Royal still having legitimacy and a hold on the royal palace. As Mamo said, it's a silent takeover because when the heirs stopped inheriting it, there were concubines that were able to guide the rightful king forth. They were able to act as the determiner as to who was rightfully chosen. So that myth of the Mother Royal became more prevalent and prestigious, to the point that there was no mention of the father because she married a local chieftain, but it was only her child that became emperor, which is probably when they designed the shrine for the right of choosing. But it's interesting because she's a foreigner. She came into this land, and in becoming this mythological figure, in having this justification for the rulings family's power and their lineage, and being given this divine connection, she's also established her family's right to rule, their divine providence over this land that was being ruled by other people before she arrived. Hence why the Mother Royal's child was the first to be emperor, is to give legitimacy to their lineage. That she's become so cemented in the country that people almost don't question the fact that she has come from outside, that she wasn't native essentially to this land. She was a foreigner that came in, she married, and her children were given this legitimacy to become the ruling family that it is now. So it's like how they say that in the West that royals are the closest thing to God, is what they would have said during the medieval period, that they are hand chosen, they are the living embodiment, and that gives them divine right to rule. And this is essentially what that is. It is a tale that has become a myth, that has become so deeply ingrained into the royal family and their lineage that you can't question their right, but also can't question their divine connection to the gods themselves, because she was pregnant with a god, by the gods. There was no mention of the father, and that is to make her almost like this mythological figure, this woman above reproach. So that essentially cemented her lineage and their control over the country for the subsequent generations. And it's why they changed the rules to ensure that they could continue to hold providence and control without anyone being able to take it from them. Really interesting, because it's how most royal families rule, is through their connection to the divinity of whether it be God or gods plural. So this narrative of her being some goddess who gave birth to the first emperor, and then every child subsequent has to go through this divine rite because they have this genetic condition that allows them to see, but nobody knows it's a genetic condition. They just think it's a sign that they have been touched by the Mother Royal, that they are destined to inherit because of this divine connection to her. But it is interesting that it's still a patrilineal line, but that is because the Emperor took over, and unfortunately, it is a man's world. And she was doing it to cement her legitimacy as the ruler of this country and as a woman that came from elsewhere into this land, but also to elevate her children and her line going forward, that they would always be able to hold that power. That's insane. What a girl boss. But such an interesting episode. I feel like every episode of Apothecary Diaries gets more and more interesting. We get more depth, we get more understanding. Poor Jinshi is going through it right now because he feels like he's lying to Mao Mao. He feels like he's not telling her the truth, but Mao Mao does know. And I find it really interesting that Jinshi did think that the Emperor was his father. But it makes sense because he didn't know who the old man was until he was much older. And it was around that same time that he was also told that the current emperor wasn't his dad, but was his older brother. So if he's around the emperor, but not around the previous emperor, then he's going to obviously assume that the current emperor is his father. Whereas the previous emperor, he was never allowed near. He didn't actually know who he was or who the older woman was until he was much older and being taught sort of his family history, his lineage. But it's just interesting that he was actually correct without knowing that he was correct. If you enjoyed this react, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below to help boost this video into the algorithm. And until next episode, bye!